Good day. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good day. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good day. Welcome to Advocacy Anywhere, powered by AJC. Advocacy Anywhere is AJC's digital platform that enables you to engage with AJC's global expertise, content, and advocacy from wherever you are. Today's program is brought to you in partnership with Jewish Insider. You can sign up for Jewish Insider's daily kickoff by visiting jewishinsider.com. Today we are joined by Nick Cannon, an American comedian, rapper, producer, and television host. Nick recently came under fire after making anti-Semitic comments on his podcast and YouTube show, Cannon's Class. But since then, he has repeatedly made public apologies and has spent the past few weeks going through a process of multiple meetings with AJC and others to gain a deeper understanding of Judaism and anti-Semitism. Today is Cannon's first appearance on a Jewish program, and we are delighted that he has joined us for this important public conversation. Moderating today's program is Rabbi Noam Marins, AJC's Director of Interreligious and Intergroup Relations, who has been in touch with Nick over the past several weeks. After we hear from Nick and Noam, we will take your questions. You may email your questions to questions@ajc.org. Questions is plural. Noam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Belle, and welcome, Nick, to AJC Advocacy Anywhere. It's a delight to have you here.
Rabbi Noam, my man, good to see you.
We thought that it would be a good idea if we could take our private conversations a little bit more public as part of the process of not only getting to know one another, but allowing others to know you, and people in your community perhaps know me and see how we're having a conversation together.
Absolutely, absolutely. A healthy conversation.
So a lot happened in the last month.
To say the least.
And I want to hear you tell it in your own words. Certainly there was blatant anti-Semitism in the video, in the podcast that we were able to view or catch snippets of,
right,
with classic stereotypes and even conspiracy theories about the Jewish people, a little bit of identity politics.
Right.
Who can call themselves what?
Right.
Kinds of things. And then there was some introspection, education, perhaps a series of apologies.
Indeed.
And these kinds of conversations. So why don't you tell us, in your words, where you were and what happened and where we're going?
Yeah, I'd like to start off by saying the great historian, Dr. John Henry Clark, says sometimes you could talk about the right things in the wrong way. And never even a question of intention or identity. My podcast, Cannon's Class, has always been a place to have, difficult and tough discussions in an open environment. And my goal has always been to have discussions with people where I learn. I'm the student, I'm the vessel, and I wanted to learn more about the situation with Professor Griff and how he felt that he had been blackballed for the last 30 years and kicked out of the world famous group, one of my favorite groups, Public Enemy, due to some anti-Semitism that was projected in the 80s, or the accusations of anti-Semitism during that time. So I was like, okay, this is a forum where we can have these open dialogues. Unbeknownst to me, of certain tropes that we will continue to discuss in this forum, but it was at the time things that I thought was factual information I didn't know were dog whistles to a certain community. And through this process, I've definitely learned, like when you said, when there's conversations about identity, there's conversations about positions of power, and when we come from communities, or two communities that share oppression and and have persecution in common. My goal in that conversation, once I laid the groundwork, was to get to the place of saying, there is no boogeyman. There is, and I think, well into the conversation, maybe too far in 90 minutes, maybe, or so. I kind of got to the point of like, well, we hear all of these things about certain people being empowered, certain groups, oppressing other groups. But if we believe in, in a conversation of empowerment, if we believe that we are powerful people, then we can't be afraid or scared of any oppressive powers or boogeymen. But obviously through the times that we're currently in with social media and so many different things, people don't have time to sit down and necessarily listen to a whole 90-minute discussion. And like I said, when I set off quite a few alarms, hurtful alarms, that those were the things that rang through more than the conversation about empowerment. And that's where I apologize specifically for the hurtful words, because that was never my intention. So I needed to step back and really say, okay, well, if this is what I was attempting to do, but this is what came forth, I have to rethink and reconstruct this whole process. And now through, this process of atonement, I always say atonement is a process. An apology is a step, but atonement is a process. And as we, as our shared faiths know, atoning is something that we go through to make ourselves better. So if we're ever placed in this position again, that we make a different decision.
And of course, you dedicated yourself to education, which would prevent saying things that are either unfactual historically and equally important, painful to another community. What does that process look like for you?
That process is, it's a healthy process, because, I always say words are what got us here, and words are powerful, but actions are even more powerful. And actions are gonna be what gets me out of this, because people are gonna see my true character, my true heart, the true compassion that I speak about. When I'm saying, I do believe I come from a place and come from, a culture and a tradition of a compassionate people. And so even no matter what's going on, I must first say, I'm sorry. I must first say, I apologize. I must first say, I wish to repent when it comes to, the hurtful words. I often talk about, my children, and, in a sense where they like to throw rocks. They like to go outside and throw rocks. And, when they're throwing rocks, when a rock hits someone, first thing you do is you say, I apologize, even if that wasn't your intention, even if it wasn't, however you see the situation. I teach my children, you must first apologize when you hurt someone, and then we'll deal with why you were throwing rocks, and figure out there's other things that you can throw, if other ways that you can engage in fellowship. So in that manner, my words hurt people. And I needed to understand after, I apologize. And that was the thing what I was initially questioning when, a lot of the people from the Jewish community and many other communities were wondering, well, you need to apologize. I was like, well, help me understand what I need to apologize for. Please correct me. People, like yourself and many others from different organizations, but even, specifically the AJC sent me a lot of literature and things where, like, even, this was so helpful. The Translate Hate, and it's pretty much like a glossary of things that, even from online and certain things that I learned, that I was like, wow, I wasn't even aware certain conversations led to things like, obviously the horrible Holocaust, and certain ideals and propaganda that were pushed forward that, things that go back, a century or more, even, as we say, centuries, if we're having a scriptural conversation, to where a lot of times the Jewish community has been perceived as the scapegoat or the blame for so many things, and it's not fair. And if my goal truly is to break down the walls and barriers amongst communities and bring us closer together, and it truly is time to get rid of all of the things that divide us. And I utilize this moment. I'll be that sacrificial lamb if I have to be that person that stands firm and says, a lot of people may have been upset that I apologize, but I feel like that's what someone of true character is actually supposed to do when they hurt someone. And then now let's get through this process of truth and reconciliation, and how we can speak the truth to power, but we can also get to that ultimate place of reconciliation.
Thank you. Now, before we move on to Black-Jewish relations, just one word about this. You could imagine that there are a lot of people out there with a lot of different opinions about whether you and I should be meeting in this way.
Oh yeah, I saw the comments. Indeed.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
We can handle that.
Absolutely.
But I want you, before we move on to Black-Jewish relations, I want you to address the cynics who look at this as a transactional moment.
Oh man, I love that. Honestly, and this is a thing, and I've said this to many others in private. I said this to you in private. I'm an anti-authoritarian in its purest form. I've kind of lived my life going against the grain and doing what I want to do. So no one can make me do anything. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to be in a position to where I've been able to provide for my family on those standards. So I would never apologize to keep a job. I would never apologize for money. I've walked away from so much in my life because I truly feel like I'm a man of integrity and character. But what I have no problem doing is apologizing for when I'm wrong. I have no problem standing for what is right. And in this scenario, you know, a lot of people from many different sides are saying, oh, well, he's just doing this because someone's forcing him to, or he's just doing this because he's trying to save a job. All of those people clearly don't know me and don't know my history, because I like to stand on what's right. You know what I mean? I'm a true student of many mentors and jegnas that have come before me who always stand on the truth in a firm way, but have no problem saying I was wrong. And in many scenarios or in many cases throughout this last month, you know, I've done things that haven't been popular, you know, but when you can't worry about what's popular. I mean, I feel like Dr. King says you have to be a molder of a consensus. And in this place, I truly had to step up and do what was right. And ultimately, if people were hurt, let's figure out why people were hurt and let's bring us all together. So for all of those people that say whatever, whether they come up again with their conspiracy theories of, you know, me being forced to do this or me trying to save a job or doing it for money, I got enough money. I'm good. I'm doing this because I truly want to bring our communities closer together and right the wrongs and get rid of anything that isn't true. Because everything I want to come out of my mouth, I want to be the truth. I want to speak truth. I want to speak love. I want to speak compassion. And if I'm not speaking truth, love, and compassion, then I'm wrong.
We might come back to this, to the broad topic of understanding the Jewish people better and avoiding anti-Semitic tropes, but I want to segue now to Black-Jewish relations, a challenging area. We have an African-American leader, a Jewish leader, talking to one another here. You know the history.
Yes.
It was a wonderful history. It continues to be a history of alliances, more than it's given credit for. Just recently, the Black-Jewish Congressional Caucus reconvened itself under AJC's assistance, and there are alignments between the Black and Jewish communities. But it's true that there have been incidents, there have been individuals that have derailed a bit that historical positive relationship.
Yes.
What is your understanding of the relationship between the two communities, and is this the moment when we need to get everybody together again?
This is definitely the moment we have to bring everyone together. I mean, initially, when we get to the core of it, we all come from the same place. And as brothers under the Abrahamic faith and studies, we know in which we speak of the motherland or we speak of the origin, you know, if we're having a scriptural discussion, it truly is about just giving reverence to the creator. And but once as years and centuries and, you know, oppressive nature comes across, it's, you know, I always talk about the great aristocracies and conquerors and the colonialism that has taken over the world. It's made us all compartmentalize, and it made us all embrace our people and who we are. But then at times, you know, we find two oppressed people going at each other, and that definitely shouldn't be the goal. I mean, we all know, or some of us may or may not know, but we come from a persecuted people on many levels, and it goes all the way back to the origins in Africa. It goes, you know, specifically, you know, to the 1930s and 40s, and, you know, all the way to the civil rights movement. And in hand are great leaders like Dr. King and Stanley Levinson, who, you know, did so much together with Black and Jewish relations and beyond. But at times, those things can be, sometimes we're on the wrong side of history. Sometimes, you know, our sensitivities, our fear comes forth, and we just wish to protect, or we wish to separate, when in those times we should come together. And it takes true leaders. It takes true strong people to stand firm and say, no, we're gonna bring this together. And I believe in the 2020 time, this is truly that time to do that. But we have to know the history. We have to know, you know, that the Jewish community was a part of the civil rights movement and many other movements, and Brown versus Board of Education, to so many. But also, we need the Jewish community to be with us in this fight in 2020 as well. And if there's a way to align, if there's something that we truly can do, I would love to be a conduit for that.
Well, it's clear to me that when you have two peoples who have the unfortunate distinction in hate crime statistics, my people being the most attacked people in the United States on the basis of faith.
Yes.
And your people being the most attacked people on the basis of race, we understand that there are others who hate us.
Yes.
And when they hate, they don't discriminate between those whom they hate. And therefore, African Americans and Jews in this country have to fight the common enemy of hate, of those who would disenfranchise, those who would not see all of us as part of the divine creation.
Oh, absolutely. And we've laid the groundwork throughout history. I mean, from the non-Black supporters in the civil rights movement, 40% of them were from the Jewish community. The ideas of our universities, you know, our Jewish universities, our HBCUs, rallied together for years, even in the 1940s, specifically, you know, my alma mater and the place I continue to study, Howard University, welcomed so many Jewish doctors into their medical program, which went on, you know, in the 1940s to create some of these, you know, some of our best hospitals and best doctors we have now, from our brothers and sisters from the Jewish community. So understanding and learning all of that, but then also knowing the alliances that have been created, and knowing that the Jewish community is only 2% of the population. African-American community teeters around 13%. If we put that together, that's 15%. We can make some real changes, some real moves, and learn from each other in such a great way. And it doesn't have to be the oppression Olympics about who was gone through more pain or who continues to go through pain. Like, let's galvanize our positive energy and our compassion, and you know, use it as a defense against the hate.
Speaking of coming together, one of the most awful moments of our lifetime this year, a difficult year, COVID, racial injustice, George Floyd, George Floyd is just a symbol of a longer historical problem of racial injustice. He's a human being, but he became a symbol of that challenge. But what was uplifting was the diversity of the response, that it wasn't seen as simply one people's problem. We can identify with that as Jews. We don't want anti-Semitism to be a Jewish problem. We want it to be the problem of society, that society will redeem it. And the same thing with racism. We want to be able to come together as a diverse people to say it has no place in America. How are you feeling about this moment? How do we capture this moment and make sure that the energy is used in a positive way?
Well, Rabbi Noam, I would first have to say there's many of these moments, you know, as someone who's been, you know, on the front lines for, you know, the majority of this, trivial, like, I almost want to say I got to accept, because the media picks up on it and it becomes catchy and it becomes about a hashtag. But as someone who has, I stood in that spot where George Floyd was murdered, we are still fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor. I stood in a spot where Mike Brown was murdered, Eric Garner. You know, I even put a piece together called I Can't Breathe Again, because this is a perpetual thing that goes on within our community. And oppression in this superiority that has been placed over my community, your community as well, that we have to obey, that we have been imprisoned by a mentality that there's higher powers that will, if we don't fall in line with what they tell us to do, it can get to a place where our lives will be taken away and they can destroy our communities in this way. So I try to stay away from the hashtags. I try to stay away from, you know, the catchy sayings where it says, oh, we are all about love, because then you find people debating, you know, Black Lives Matter and all lives matter, or, you know, this was anti-Semitic, or what does anti-Semitic even mean? Or, you know, and I feel like those can often become distractions, even though they're looking to help and simplify a matter, but you can't simplify these matters. These matters are real matters where, you know, my 400 years of oppression isn't a hashtag. You can't sum that up in a hashtag. The over 6 million lives that were lost in the Holocaust. And you know, when a young man of 19 walks into a synagogue with a, you know, automatic weapon and murders and slaughters people, these aren't things that should just be clickbait headlines. These are things as a people we must deal with. And you know, it was said best, we got to come together as brothers and sisters and a people, or we'll perish as fools. And I think a lot of times we allow the media to sensationalize and want to rally together, when ultimately it's so much bigger than that. It's more about true conversations like this. It's truly saying, well, what can we do? How can we put our resources together? How can we learn from the AJC? How can the AJC help us in the fight for justice for Breonna Taylor, and the fight for the injustices in our criminal system, in the education, in, you know, helping more young people of color, young minorities get the best education and healthcare possible. These are things that, you know, need to go on. And I love the rallying. I love the marching. I've been out there. I will continue to be out there. But my message is, all right, well, when you go home, what are you going to do? How are we going to put forth? And, you know, that's truly where I feel like together, these conversations, it doesn't serve us to say, well, you're on that side and I'm on this side. If we really want to see a change, we have to be the change.
And as you know, from what I sent you, but you probably knew it just from having conversations with me, with my AJC colleague, Holly Huffnagel, who you met as well, U.S. Director for Combating Anti-Semitism, how committed we are toward racial justice in this country. We have a plan that we've laid out. It is in cooperation with our African American partners, particularly with the Black Jewish Congressional Caucus.
Beautiful.
The differences of opinion as to how to solve issues, but there is no lack of commitment to meeting this challenge now so that we can bequeath to our children a better legacy than the one we inherited.
Indeed.
Let's go back to anti-Semitism, which brought us together.
Indeed.
Anti-Semitism pulled a fast one on my generation. You know, I'm 61 years old. I was born here in the United States. Let's face it, I didn't have a lot of experience with anti-Semitism, having been brought up in Brooklyn and on the South Shore of Long Island, and having a insular Jewish experience and going to university, but we thought that 75 years after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, that this was a thing of the past. But it turned out that it wasn't. First in Europe and other places, and then here in our beloved United States, the most hospitable place for Jews in the history of the diaspora who wake up one morning and they're murdering Jews in synagogues, in Pittsburgh, in Poway, in Jersey City, in Muncie, and physical attacks against Jews in Brooklyn. And the anti-Semitism is from a multiplicity of sources. It's not just one source. It's multiple sources on the left, on the right, in the name of religious extremism, groups acting upon one another in an inexplicable way. So what is going on here? What can an African American leader do to help us meet this challenge so that we can say that when anti-Semitism tried to raise its head again, we had learned the lessons of the past?
Truly. Education. I believe we start with education, atonement, and through atonement, truth and reconciliation. And when I speak of that, I say those in that order for a reason, because I feel like it's dialogue, and we both must atone, because that's how you clear the air. It's interesting. We often reference Dr. King, but it's a long list of people who have also at one point in time been called anti-Semitic for things that they've said, like the Dr. Kings, like the James Baldwin, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X. So many people, and now I'm amongst that. But all of those people chose to educate themselves and engage with their Jewish brothers and sisters during those times. I often say, when someone rings the alarm, some people run and some people some people run to get away, and others seek to help during that time. And the alarm was rang. So through that, I'm running towards helping. And I feel like we should all do that from both communities when we come to the table. There's a reason why there's certain tropes, that I wasn't aware of tropes. I thought, these are things that I've read in books, even through my academic and scholastic studies, from doctors and psychologists and scientists. But not knowing that a lot of those words hurt a community, not knowing that a lot of those concepts and propaganda were used, through eugenics and the Holocaust. So you must first educate. You must decipher and really have that hard conversation about what's true and what's not true. as two communities who have actually experienced great oppression, how do we get from up under that? I believe, you know, as a whole, you know, not generalizing, but as a whole, the Jewish community has over from the time of the 40s till today has did an outstanding job of remembrance. And I believe you and I had the conversation where you taught me some great things about one, there isn't even in Hebrew, there isn't a word for history, but the word is actually for remembrance. Because when you experience remembrance, then you can navigate the future well and not repeat mistakes. Because a lot of us get caught up on what happened in history opposed to remembering and honoring those that we lost and who actually have now allowed us to be in the positions that we are in now. We must remember and honor those people that we lost in the Holocaust. We must remember and honor those our ancestors from the transatlantic slave trade and beyond. You know, our that's what we do as people of faith when we study our scriptures. We're doing that in remembrance. You know, our word says, "Do this in the remembrance of me." You know, so in that process, then you can reconcile, and through atonement, you can make different decisions when placed again, and get rid of any malice that was there, any misconceptions that were there, and then you move forward together with true wisdom and understanding.
You know, we have an opportunity, you and I, because fate has brought us together and you have embraced the outreach of AJC. We have the opportunity, because of our reach, to be symbols of how that is done.
Indeed.
Learning about one another's communities and what hurts, what pains us, and to learn that history. I like the way you said it, not just so you can be a historian, but to pay forward, may I say, so that we can create a better place. And we can do that here in the United States, but we can also do it elsewhere where our history can be found.
Right.
On pilgrimages, and to show others what that can look like.
Indeed, indeed.
Before I turn to the audience for some questions, I want to hear from you what you have loved about your Jewish education during the last few weeks.
Oh,
I
man.
feel like I've been one of your teachers, and I'm not alone, but this is not a test. Just an opportunity to share something that moved.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many things. It's funny you said teacher, like many may or may not know, but I'm currently, you know, studying for my PhD at the School of Divinity at Howard University. So theology is something, you know, wishing to be a theologian. So from the scriptural studies to even this process in itself, hopefully I can get some kind of college credit for it. But and do so, man. I've had brothers like yourself and so many who guide me through this process, and I have great reverence and appreciation for. But one specifically I would say is my brother Malcolm Homeline, who has invited me to Shabbat. We had Shabbat like a couple of weeks ago, which was an amazing experience for me to experience the dinner on the Sabbath with such an amazing family, and to know that, you know, members of the community do that weekly. You know, it was like almost a Thanksgiving feast but you know, that was just even watching family and understanding, you know, taking that time for yourself. You know, I also, you know, the day before that, I had the opportunity of fasting for Tisha B'Av and reading and studying and praying and meditating that whole day. So by the time we got to Shabbat, I was quite hungry. so it worked out really well. But I mean, that, you know, something that I took for myself, didn't even really wish to do in the public. I've also had the opportunity to visit Crown Heights and Chabad was a great experience by a friend of mine, Ravi Mati, who gave me this book that I'm currently reading about Rebbe, and I'm looking forward, soon to visit that honorable grave site. But even then, I got.
When you finish all of that, you'll need my help to sort out the diversity of the Jewish.
It's so much. It truly is. It's quite a bit. But to even go, to see, that community in Crown Heights, and saw where they make the Torahs and the mezuzahs, and all of that stuff was so fascinating to me. And as someone who's already been studying Hebrew, all my life, coming from a very traditional Christian background, and learning Hebrew through that process, but even now through my theology studies, been picking up on so many different words. And the teshuvah is probably the one that has probably resonated with me the most, because it's truly the process in which I'm experiencing and returning to myself, and the pure compassion and love that I wish to express that I'm getting from my brothers and sisters in the Jewish community.
Wonderful. I may have more for you yet, but I think I'm going to give a chance to probably quite a few people who are trying to get through and ask the difficult questions.
Bring it on. Yeah, you was nice to me. You was nice. Let's get to the difficult stuff. You my friend. Let's get to the people who don't know me, who don't know me.
So I'm turning it back to my dear friend and colleague, Belle.
Thank you so much, Noam and Nick, for that great start to this conversation. We're getting a lot of questions, and in fairness to our viewers, I'm going to ask the questions that have come up the most. And Nick, I'm going to ask you a few at a time that are of similar theme.
Okay.
Our first questions come from Melanie Nelkin and Ellen Schoninger, who ask, how can we enlist more pop culture leaders and celebrities in this building bridges exercise to help spread the values that we're discussing today? And have you had those types of conversations with other celebrities? And also, when you made your comments that stirred up some controversy, some celebrities did defend you. Have you had conversations with them in the aftermath, and have you been able to share with them what you learned?
Absolutely. Wonderful questions. Thank you for that. And again, that's why I said I'll be the, for the lack of a better term, the sacrificial lamb in this process as a member of the entertainment community. And I've said this to many of my friends and colleagues in that space, because a lot of them were quick to want to defend, and we want to stand by you and stand with you. And almost in that sense, I said, like, drawing a line. And I was like, no, don't do that. This is my hill. I put myself here, and my actions will get me out of it, as much as they wish to support me. But what I did tell them in that process, because everybody's like, what can we do? How can we, stand firm? I was like, well, let's clear the air and let's atone first. And then let's, through our influence with the right words, the correct terminology, let's talk about truly bringing light to how we can operate as one, how we have operated as one throughout the past. And I always say the African-American community and the Jewish community, specifically in the world of entertainment, have done, in media, have done some tremendous things together. And through that, now it's again, we have to control the narrative. The narrative has been controlled with supremacy for far too long. So now we have to take it back and put it into our music. We have to put it into our movies. We have to put it into our documentaries. We have to put it into our social media, because if we continue to, we all know what happens to a house that's divided. It stands and shelters no one. So if we're in this, especially in an election year, where in a year like we've never experienced with 2020, people have opinions and people are frustrated and ready to do things. So they look to leaders, and I'll say every celebrity isn't a leader. And I actually don't even consider myself a leader. I consider myself a member of the community. And I don't consider myself a celebrity either, because a celebrity is one who is celebrated. And right now I don't need to be celebrated. Right now it's time for me to be a student and listen and work and put my efforts, my resources, and my energy towards bringing our communities closer together and towards creating a change.
You know, Nick, I don't know what the questioners are asking. My kids are texting me why you didn't come to our house for Shabbat dinner.
I'm ready. Let me know. I'm definitely ready.
Okay, Belle.
Thank you. We're actually getting a lot of questions, Nick, regarding your opinion on the role that Black Jews can play in this part of the healing process between our communities as they straddle both identities. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, we need you guys more than ever. I have quite a few Black and Jewish friends that have, you know, given me this conflict. And I told Rabbi Noam this before, and it's actually something that I really never wanted to share in the public because I didn't want to seem like I was using it as an excuse. And I mean, I'm still even nervous talking about it.
Is this the big reveal that's coming on, Nick?
I mean, I guess I could tell them. I mean, but it's something because I wanted to deal with the issues and truly atone and truly apologize. Learning and growing and not using excuses. But, you know, my mother has been calling me every single day since this has happened with so much family history and stuff. My mother's mother, or I'll just say, my great-grandfather was a Spanish rabbi, and he's a Sephardic Jewish man who, so as much heat as I've been catching from the public and the outside, this hit home for my family in a real way because I come from a Black and Jewish family on my mother's side. And it's, you know, Sephardic Jews in that sense, or from the Sephardic Jewish lineage. So, you know, these are in this weird mixed up world, you know, these are men and women in the Jewish community who speak Spanish, who have Black. It's so fascinating. So even within that, I'm saying those are the people that we need to step up and be a part of these conversations more than ever, because one thing that it shows is that the Jewish community, Jewish is not a race, you know, it's a people, it's a culture that's welcoming to every race. That's anyone who wants to be, you know, whether you're a convert or whether you're someone who was actually throughout your family's lineage, and it's considered family for you, or you're just fascinated by the study. It's a welcoming culture and a welcoming people. And I love it. I love the Jewish people in my family. I love my Jewish brothers and sisters that are my colleagues and my friends. And that's one of the reasons even more so when all of this went down. At first I did want to, you know, kind of stand strong and buck against the system, and I'm not apologizing. And the people that I knew close to me, the people in my family, the people, you know, some of my best friends who are members of the Jewish community, we didn't know how to have a dialogue. And so I apologize to them. I apologize for them, because then that cleared the air and allowed me to say, well, this is what I believe is true, or this is what I thought, or these were the, and then we were able to get to it because they truly saw my heart. They saw my compassion and that I had no malice, but there were some things that I questioned. There were some things that I was confused by. There were some things that, you know, were tropes that, you know, have been taught to me. So when someone who's experiencing all of that in their own experience, being a member of the Black and Jewish community, those people probably have it the worst, you know, because they see it from every side. So I encourage to, you know, I'm wishing to have more dialogue with people like that. You know, like I said, I have people who have it in their lineage, and then I have people like my brother Amari Stoudemire, who I talk to, you know, weekly. He's in Israel in the midst of, you know, winning MVPs and all of that on the basketball court. But he took the time and to teach me and give me the tutelage of someone who just, you know, in a very orthodox manner, he's changed his life and is following the Hebrew law in such a beautiful way. So I just want to engage with those people more often. He and I are speaking about building Black and Jewish community centers in the inner city and disenfranchised areas to help people understand it and walk in, their true authority and what they believe.
Thank you. Val, we're ready for another question.
Thank you. Nick, you mentioned the difficult question, so this is one of those. I'm just going to preface.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are those in the Black community who find some of Louis Farrakhan's message about Black empowerment uplifting, but he, as you know, is also famous for engaging in anti-Semitism, including referring to Jews as termites and homophobia and other very controversial and bigoted remarks. What do you think about the role that Farrakhan has played in the Black community? And what do you say to someone who today would praise him? And another question related, are you willing to publicly call out prominent Black individuals who makes anti-Semitic remarks in the same way that you would hope that others would call out other prominent individuals for making racist statements toward the Black community?
That is one of those difficult questions, and I'm going to answer it with as much love and compassion as I possibly can. Rabbi Noam, you just recently wrote a piece that resonated with me, that used some Hebrew terminology, and forgive me if I butcher it, but I think it's Amen, Anili, Amili. Hopefully I said that right. I'm always messing up my Hebrew. I'm learning, but I know that it means if I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? And I preface with that because in the Black community, we often feel we have no one that is for us. And the people who do step up for us are instantly condemned. Like I said earlier, some of our great leaders have been called anti-Semitic. Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, the list goes on, Desmond Tutu, so many people that we look to as Black leaders have been called anti-Semitic. And, Martin Luther King at one moment was, by America, was called the most dangerous Negro in America or in the nation, and was deemed a terrorist. And so when you see someone like Minister Farrakhan, who to our community has been a leader, I've watched him transform the lives of incarcerated individuals, people who are dealing with the sickness of addiction, turn them to the discipline of Islam, and watch these people create families and provide for their loved ones. I mean, he put together the greatest peace gathering in the history of the world. I mean, the numbers describe itself with the Million Man March. So for us, we see that. But the words and the demagoguery and the hate speech that your community, or specifically the Jewish community, has experienced, I can never stand for anything hateful. I can never stand for anything that does harm or treachery to a community that invokes fear. But I would say, I would love, especially as these elders are getting up in age, the thing, if we're truly trying to break down these walls and get rid of the division, I would love for our leaders, our elders to step up and sit down at any table and have a discussion. And, like I said, I'm never here to defend an individual, but God has never given me the power to throw away or condemn anyone, especially when I come from a culture of condemnation and people have been treated less than human. So I can't ever throw away a leader to the Black community. So I say this, and I was taught this, and actually I said my father, who is someone I never agree with, who is a man of the faith, a minister for all my life, and we don't share the same views on many things, because he has very traditional concepts at times that can even often align with Minister Farrakhan. But one thing where we always will resolve and hug it out unconditionally with love is that, I can condemn the message, but I can never condemn the messenger. And that's through Christianity and all the Abrahamic faiths. That's scripture right there. So I would encourage my brothers and sisters in the Jewish community. I know in the past there may have been some hateful and harsh things said, and it's one of those hard things for anyone to forgive. Just finished, I'll be writing this book report soon, probably today. I just finished my studying the sunflower by Simon Wiesenthal. And that's all about the possibilities and the limits of forgiveness. And it's a difficult conversation when you see the symposium of some people say, forgive with all your heart. And then some people say, I can never forgive, or I can't forgive for what others have done. But I also can't be accountable for what others have done either. So in this process of atonement, which I'm experiencing, I can only approach it from that way, to where we must condemn hate. We must condemn demagoguery and anything that separates us. But we are not in any position to throw any human being away.
We appreciate the honesty of that answer, Nick. And I know it won't surprise you that that still remains for us not fully satisfactory.
Absolutely. And I that's one thing I pray for every night, is like, how can we bring the leaders of those communities? Because imagine if, you know, the men and women in the Nation of Islam and the men and women in, you know, any Jewish community came together and sat down and had a conversation, how much healing would occur? And
our concern, just to express it publicly, even though you and I have spoken about it privately.
Yeah.
To say it publicly, which is important as well, in part, we got into trouble together, meaning you got into trouble, if I may say.
Good trouble, as John Lewis calls it. Good trouble. So we're gonna lead to connection and love.
Nick, this was not good trouble that you got into.
What I got into was good trouble, but now where these conversations can be good trouble.
The not good trouble that you got into was because of the narratives that you had heard from others whom you
read, yes,
as your leaders.
Yes.
And therefore, because you have gone down this road, you have a responsibility, I think, to call it out.
Absolutely.
Call out the stereotypes and the blaming and, frankly, the evading of a narrative that will actually heal and address the issues, as opposed to laying at the foot of a boogeyman, as you said.
Yeah, there is no boogeyman. There is no.
So we need to understand where that came from.
True.
And I'm asserting that it came from what you were hearing.
And reading and studying. I mean, there's several books and leaders that, you know, even and not, as you know, they're not all from the Black community. You know, the Jewish community for so many years has been the scapegoat and placed the blame and from the Christian community, you know, over through the years. From different people will always like to blame the Jewish people for this and the Jewish people for that. And even in my dialogue and the things that got me in trouble and the hurtful words that I said, I thought I was just speaking facts. Whether it was about, you know, centralized banking, whether it was about, the ideas of, you know, where we come from, and we get caught up in this in this tribal animosities, you know, even within, which I'm learning, even within, you know, the Jewish community, it's complex in the way of where people believe where they come from and who did what, and when you start to repeat these things, and you know, sometimes you do it, you know, to sound smart opposed to actually being smart. I could have took a lot more time to detail, to research properly, and really understand, like, in ideas when there's certain landmines or tropes, you have to speak to the truth. Otherwise, you'll take something that sounds like the truth and put so much on it that isn't the truth. And now you know, not only did you hurt people, but you've endangered people. And we're dealing with a time where, especially, you know, it's unfortunate that young people are or not just all people are, you know, committing hate crimes and terrorist acts in synagogues and repeating things that are not true at all, and doing it under the guise of whether it's this things that they've heard from this administration, things that they've read from different books. We really got to get and that's what to that person's question and to your response, I stand firmly in agreement with I have to be the example to say, yes, we thought this was this, or, you know, even specifically thinking about something like the Rothschilds. I didn't understand that was used as propaganda in the Holocaust and those ideas. And once I stepped back and saw that, I was like, well, wow, that was never really my intention. And again, I don't know, I take full blame for everything that I said. So I never wanted to make it about intention. But when you know that you're coming from a place of you're thinking you're sharing information, but at the same time, you are actually adding fuel to the situation. I think you know, when I had the opportunity to read Barry Weiss's book, How to Fight Anti-Semitism, the thing that stepped, you know, that's such a great read. It stood out to me and said, when it talks about, you know, anti-Semitism is fueled by the malicious, but it continues to feed off the well-intentioned. And that hit me. I was like, oh man, I thought I was doing something good, but I was continuing these tropes that really serve no purpose. You know, even whatever we tend to believe, how does that move us forward in our unity together? You know, we definitely have to, as communities, take responsibility for, you know, the past, but moving, like I said, if we're talking about this in remembrance of, it's learning from those situations, accepting the truth, and growing and moving forward together. Because there's no reason to say, well, your people did this and my people did this and this and this, if that's continuing to separate us. Let's figure out from this day forward, how do we seek atonement? How do we seek that to shiva in the right way, to where we realize this is a moment in history. This will be a moment of remembrance on how we all grew closer together.
Well, I know we're near the end of the hour, but I leave it to you to decide what we're doing next.
No, I'm going to give it to you to close us out. But Nick, I just want you to know that many of our viewers, in a very Jewish manner, are asking, obviously this is a two-way street, and Bobby Baruch and Sharon Sokol and others, but are eager to know what more the Jewish community can do to be better allies, to learn about our own thoughts that we might have and prejudices unknown toward the Black community. So obviously the conversation has to continue, but you should know that that's very much on our viewers' minds. And before closing us out, Noam, I want to give you the last word.
Take us home, Rabbi.
This is a very productive conversation, Nick, because if I were to have a goal for this session together, it would be that people in your community, people in my community, people who feel comfortable in both communities would not see it as what we began with, some kind of transactional, but actually something of friendship and promise and candor and honesty. When we were disagreeing a moment ago, it was very clear to you that I was disagreeing with you, but we're only in the beginning of our conversations. And I think you have seen that with AJC, there's a certain kind of conversation that we are having that is one of education, of learning, of relationship building, of being clear about where the lines in the sand are for us,
right?
Being Pollyannish about that, telling you the truth about what we can live with and what we can't. But as long as we understand one another and we're honest about that and we tell the people what we're doing, we're willing to engage with a person like you who is able to influence both your community, our community, and as was asked of me about my community, reaching out to your community so that we can be exemplars and role models for the world. I hope that you felt that way. I hope the audience felt that way. And I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds, Nick.
Oh, I can't follow that. You summed it up so well.
You can say amen.
Amen. But honestly, I would only say, I would echo everything that you just said. But I would focus on the term reciprocity. Through my process of atonement, I know in Yom Kippur, there's 3 steps, and there's in the Islamic faith, there's 8 steps of atonement. Christianity, we atone, periodically, but it's about making a different decision. All of them have at the end result is making a different decision when placed in that position again, and that's what I'm atoning to. And this conversation is a different decision than the ones I would previously make. And I would look to those people who want to see what they can do for the African American community, is figure out through the reciprocity, through that exchange, to atone and continue to speak truth to power, continue to find the reconciliation, but to understand and love each other in a compassionate manner. And that's hopefully what I'm displaying. Hopefully I can continue to be that light. Shalom.
Thank you, Nick. And why don't we listen to Belle as she closes us out? And we're going to have to get together again because there's too much to...
We live in the same neighborhood.
All right, Belle.
Thank you both for such a fascinating and important conversation. And thank you again, Nick, for being with us today. We really appreciate your time and honesty. And I want to share this comment from AJC President Harriet Schleifer, who says, "Mr. Cannon, I would not describe you as a sacrificial lamb, but as a teacher and the spiritual leader you are studying to become. Let us continue to work hand in glove as we are all made in the image of God." I think that's quite beautiful. And with that, I'd like to thank our audience for joining us. If you enjoyed this program, please consider making a donation to AJC at ajc.org/donate. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Take care.